All right, Rob.
You ready?
Yes, it's rolling.
Okay, Bonnie County, everyone. This is Professor Alman Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach. Want to welcome you to the Conscious Corner, along with historian Joe Hembrick. We're going to have a open forum, a news forum, or what's good Black people doing a forum tonight. We want to thank Brother Rahh Maskani for providing us the platform with the Education Network. We're here every Monday and Wednesday, and we hope that people will tune in to get news from a Black perspective. We see how the CNN and MSNBC and Channel 5, Channel 7 are molders of the news and fakers of the news and liars of the news. Well, here you ain't gonna get nothing but Black truth about what's going on in the Black community and Black world. So we want to welcome everyone for being here, and we're going to get started by seeing anybody got any good news or information about what we consider successful activities in the Black community that they think are very important. So let's go around the room. I can't see everybody, Brother Rahh, and ask them, do they have any comments on good things that Black people have done this week or this month?
All right, we'll start off with Brother Doctor.
I haven't caught up with any news, so I'm here to hear what you guys have to say.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Brother Mashinda.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Right. So what was your question? What were you saying, Professor Rahh?
Is there any good news or notable things that we should be brought up to date on that you heard about Black people doing? Good news, frontline news.
Let me get back with me. Let me think about that.
All right.
I'm gonna think about it. Get right back with you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Brother Joe.
I have an article that I ran across about this sister in Colombia by the name of Frances Elena Marquez, who rose from the ghettos of Colombia to become Colombia's vice president of the country. And she had a bunch of students at a space center in Houston, all females, getting them acclimated to, wanting to be astronauts and what have you. This article in the Time, it was in the Times on Sunday. Anybody want to look it up? Real trailblazer, a real sister. She wears her African garb, all the time when she's out in public. She's not too down on the governmental policies and all this and that, but she's about helping. I guess it's about 10% of people of African descent that live in Colombia, and she's doing her best to raise them up in the situation that they're in. Her name is Frances Elena Marquez.
Okay.
And what I wish some good news could be is them brothers and sisters starving in Somalia. We talked about earlier on the show that I would hope all of these very wealthy Muslim nations would try to help that situation out. Got Saudi Arabia and Iran, Kuwait, all these multi-million-dollar folks supposed to be of the same faith. These folks are starving to death and feel like anything is getting done. You know, there's not enough water. Even the animals are dying. Camels are dying. And folks of other faith, like they claim to be, regardless of a person's ethnicity, color, seem like they would be more willing to help out those folks. Yeah, that's the article there.
Brother Washiki.
Yeah, I want to show a clip of her. This is her right here.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Following the historic victory in Colombia's presidential election of the former guerrilla M19 member, former senator, former mayor of Bogota, Gustavo Petro, and his running mate, the Afro-Colombian environmentalist Francia Marquez Mina, we turn to our interviews with them on Democracy Now! Francia Marquez Mina has made history by being elected Colombia's first black vice president. In March of this year, I spoke to Francia Marquez when she was running for president. She lost in the primary to Petro, but he went on to choose her as his running mate. I asked her why she was running for office.
Well,
I think that more than making history, we are giving impetus to the idea that in Colombia, a new form of government is possible, governance that is built up from the Black, indigenous, and peasant peoples, from the very different sectors of the community, LGBTIQ+, from the youth, from the women, from the small farmers of Colombia, those who have been no one, that is to say, who have never had a voice in the government, who have never had a voice in order to put forward our grievances as a people. And today we need to put forward the nobodies, the people who've never had a voice, to step into the state so that we can write our own history, a history that would make it possible to live with dignity, with justice, with equity, with equality, that would enable each and every one of us to turn the page of violence of the armed conflict and to pursue agenda of social justice.
If you can talk about what that social justice agenda.
Okay, that was the young lady that Brother Hembrick was talking about.
What was her name?
Frances. Let me go back to her. Frances Marquez. Francia Marquez.
Okay, and that's Colombia.
Yes, Vice President of Colombia.
Good, that's real good news. Okay. What about you, Rashiki? Anything?
Well, it's what we're doing here, gathering every week and being consistent with bringing forth information from various people of different persuasions. And like last week, we had Ronnie Forrest, excellent poet, author, and talented in many areas. You know, just bringing forth the community of people and their ideas and their expertise. It's a beautiful thing. We're learning a lot of good information, and that's what's good.
Okay. Anything else?
Not at the moment.
All right, and no one else is on the line?
We have Brother Doctor and Machinda said come back to them. Well, Machinda did.
No, I'm talking about any other person to speak.
No, that's it. It's the Fab Five today.
Okay, well, listen, I got a lot of good news. First of all, we want to pay homage and recognize the legacy of Pharoah Sanders, who passed this week. One of the great jazz artists and who brought spirituality and jazz and fused them together. strong brother, activist, and always around helping Black people as much as he could with his lyrics and I mean in his music, you know, and he definitely was one of our greats. So we want to pay homage and make, you know, and hope that all the good he brought in the world lasts forever and may none be lost. Second, we want to bring up the mass of people that are demonstrating. First of all, the people in Iran, the women in Iran, are demonstrating against their government for what the people think was the murder of this sister because she didn't wear her hair right. They claim she had a heart attack, but they've been demonstrating all week. And whenever people stand up for justice and stand up for righteousness, you know, they run a theocracy in Iran. You know, some things are good with theocracies, but sometimes they're overbearing when a religious group is the government. And so, you know, they're pushing their value system on everyone, and those that they consider not going along with their religious belief, they punish, and people are demonstrating all over Iran. Second, we want to also recognize the fortitude and the strength and the resilience of the people of Puerto Rico, who withstood one of the most vicious storms. You know, there are a lot of Black Puerto Ricans, but at the same time, they not getting the help they should be getting from the United States and the government, because that's a United States territory, to deal with the storms that come through there. But the people find ways to survive. You know, some died, but the majority of the people withstood this act of nature that visit them every so often. And we want to commend the people of Puerto Rico for their resilience. Secondly, we want to also recognize the sister district attorney for Fulton County and for standing up and pursuing charges against Donald Trump, even though she's getting death threats and all kind of challenges from the far right, whereas other people, even the federal Department of Justice hasn't filed charges against Trump, but this sister is definitely subpoenaing and moving forward with her charge about him in that phone call asking for 3,000 more votes or 1,100 or something. But the point is that we want to commend this sister for her strength and her to do what other government agencies are not doing. And the other one, we want to recognize the other sister, Letitia James out of New York, the first Black, first of the sister of Fannie Willis out of Fulton County. She was the first Black district attorney, and she's just a strong sister, standing up, and we gotta, recognize and appreciate the strength of her, as well as Letitia James, the first Black African American Attorney General out of New York that has filed a lawsuit against Trump for $250 million, as well as referring criminal charges, referring to the IRS and the Department of Justice with all her facts, over 200 and some pages of facts of how he fabricated and his wealth, as well as got around taxes and at the same time inflated his business holdings as well as his property worth to get loans. And that's strong for sisters like that to stand up. So we want to also recognize the beauty of that, because as I said, there have been many district attorneys in New York. Trump been doing this for years. None of them would file charges. You know, I mean, he was getting away with this for years. This sister went back years and brought it all the way up to the date. But that shows the fortitude of Black people doing their job, African-American women doing their job. So tonight, also, we are, the woman king is out, and we, by way of that, we're going to discuss the strength and the contribution of Black women to the movement. And we're going to let Brother Hembrick start talking about the Dahomies, that's for women army that is portrayed in the movie Woman King. So Joe, you ready?
Can I interject, Miss Sister Make It Happen, before Joe start? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can ask her the same question, Professor Rahh, that we asked everybody else.
How you doing, sister?
I'm doing much better. Thank you, sir. How are you?
It's good to hear your voice.
Trial by fire. Trial by fire. What's happening? What's happening?
Well, we were going around taking information about anybody that can recognize positive actions Black people have done this week or this month, or even this year, that they think they should talk about or bring to our attention. You know, good news about Black people, frontline news, or just major accomplishments. And I had mentioned the Fulton County district attorney, sister for Fannie Willis, for her bold steps in investigating Trump, and really looking like she's going to be the first one to file charges against him. Even though her lives have been threatened, she had to upgrade her security. She still says she's moving forward. She would not be intimidated. As well as Letitia James, the district attorney, first African-American district attorney elected for the state of New York. And she filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump, even though she's running again. She's only been in office 4 years. And other district attorneys had been there for years and wouldn't even file charges or even investigate Trump. But 2 Black women have stood up, sort of like what Frank Willis did in Watergate. Everybody talks about Bernstein and the newspapers and made a picture about them, but they wouldn't even been able to report anything if Frank Willis, the Black security guard, hadn't reported the burglary that got the people arrested who had broken into the Democratic Party offices to get information. And that's what led to Nixon's resignation. So that's what we're looking at. Good news for the beginning of the show.
Wow, that's awesome. Great. Always great to start off with some good positivity. And there's a lot of great things happening, I'm sure, everywhere, you know. What I can talk about is, of course, the things that I'm involved with in my community in terms of wellness and Black women. The sisters were able to put together a viewing, Black Women for Wellness LA, put together a viewing of the movie King, the Woman King. And so we all got together up at UCLA, at Century City, and we went to the AMC Theater, and it was a group of us, and it was really nice and beautiful to connect and be with ourselves, families, and it was a beautiful experience. I was going to take my family, and so that's something that happened that I would like to share with the community.
Yeah, well, what was positives about the movie that you thought?
Well, what most struck me was the fact that my husband, who is really a different breed, he left the theater feeling celebrated. He didn't feel attacked. He didn't feel like men were under the attack. So that made me feel good that my husband can go to an event and enjoy it and not feel like he was being attacked through the media, through a woman highlighted movie. I also thought that it focused a lot on family. I thought it focused on, young women, their struggles for independence, for being seen and heard. I just felt that it was a great movie from my perspective.
Mm. Yeah, well, we appreciate that. That's good news that you did attend it. We're gonna get back to that because we're gonna talk about the Dahomey women and their role in history in our struggle for human and social justice. So, Brother Hembrick, you ready?
Yeah. So,
Hit the-
evening, family. I didn't check out the movie, so I can't comment on that. But the women of Dahomey, which later became Benin, which was many great artists, a plethora of outstanding artwork by the Benin people. You got to go to these European museums to really see it. But there's a long list of women leading battles and being leaders since the beginning of time. Like I've stated on other shows, that the world was a matrilineal society initially, where royalty came down to the female. I was reading something the other day about the Grimaldi, which followed the Twa people up in Europe. In 40,000 BC, they uncovered some art that shows female leadership. But going back to the beginning of recorded stuff, I probably have to start with Makeda, who, those that read the Bible, you know her as Queen Sheba, had an extensive empire, had established a lot of trade through the Far East. Her empire extended Northeast Africa through what now is the Middle East, on into India and Far East, where the Swahili language kind of developed along that trade route, had outstanding trade going on. That was during her era, during her empire. And, the Bible tells some story about King Solomon and her, which is a little distorted, I should say, as far as how the story goes down. Like, her apologizing for her blackness and all of that, and the like. And she was the big wig, not Solomon, as the story goes. But anyway, that's just one individual down through history. I got to get to I'll get to the Dahomey warriors a little later, but there was plenty, that was before them, not warriors, but leaders. Have to talk about Hatshepsut and her reign during 1550 BC as being the ruler of Egypt during the dynastic period. Going back to Makeda, her reign was before the dynastic period even started, and her uniting with the North and the South with Menes, and forget the name of the son that they had together. I think his name was Namir, which started the dynastic period in Egypt. Anyway, Hatshepsut ruled in the stead of her younger brother, who was too young to rule at the time. Which his name was Thutmose III, who was also a great warrior. That's one of the. Then moving around to down in Monroe, which is south of Nubia. With a leader, a female leader who was known as Candace. She was a great ruler, and there were several other Candaces behind her, just like with the Cleopatra. There were several of them, just wasn't the one. Then moving around to Nzinga, who fought the Portuguese for like 40 years. Now, she did lead some armies in Angola. She didn't take any disrespect by any man. I think when she met, it was a famous meeting when she met with the Portuguese, sitting on like a little throne chair, and expected her to stand. And she had one of her female warriors to act like a chair, get on all fours, and she sat on her during the entire meeting. Like I say, she led a band of female warriors, and like I say, they fought Portuguese for like 40 years. Getting to the Dahomey situation, which was around the 1600s, regarding the movement, you know, they were fighting the French. And I spoke earlier about this Berlin conference, where the European nations got together and carved up Africa like a pie, and each one of them took a territory. Where usually these warriors, female and men, were fighting those nations who were trying to colonize them. Let's see, there's another one here. Like Amina of Land, which later became, you know, Nigeria. She was during the 15th and the 16th century, and she led an army of horsemen, cavalry, that were fighting the British for years and years. Another one out of Ghana, Yaya Santiwa, like the 1840s to like 1921, you know, out there battling with, you know, female troops. And there's many of them. There's a plethora of them. There's too many to name. But I want to, like the women of Dahomey, you know, they lived, you know, they were all considered to be wives of the king. Okay. And, you know, they remained celibate unless they were, you know, given to someone, you know, to marry of another group. They remained celibate, you know, they didn't have any children and whatnot. And there's been many writings about how fierce they were and how many of them were fierce warriors. Also during the Moors in Spain, the Moors ruled Spain for 800 years. There were female warriors there. They were actually mercenaries, female mercenaries, who would hire out to help, you know, different groups in battle. You know, the Moors, they ran Portugal, Spain, and France for like 800 years. So, you know, go on and on and on with these female leaders and warriors. Another one, like in the United States, well, it became the United States, talking about the Hawaiian Islands with Queen Kukulani, who was a great leader, who was forced by the United States Marines to sign over the land to the United States while a Marine held a rifle to her head. I guess it's one of those Don Corleone's offer you not, offer you can't refuse. You're gonna sign this or your brain's gonna be on the paper. We go on and on, like what's the name? The sister on the Underground Railroad, another great warrior that ended up leading black troops.
Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman. Thank you, sir. For leading the black, some black troops against the white Southern Confederate military. So, we can go on and on and on about these great things women leaders and great women warriors have done. And I have the utmost praise for females because I know the true history of them. I wish they knew. And always bow down and they be wondering what I'm doing. And I always tell them, you guys are really stuff. You don't know it, but you are. And always equate our life with nature. And I've raised animals for years, mostly canine. And I'm always amazed at how much sharper and smarter and fierce that the females are than the males are. And so, we learn from nature, and that's what it shows, and that's what it is. But due to the rise of the world's major religions, the basic three of them, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, since their rise, the female has sort of been kicked to the curb about her accomplishments. There's a lot of them that weren't even written about because of the influence of the values that became adopted throughout these various religions. So, sisters, you're great. Always have been and always will be. And I just hope that more of you, recognize it and get in this fight because, you guys are very valuable, regardless of what it shows today about the men. Can't do it without the sisters. Even down during the Maroon societies, once enslavement came to the Western Hemisphere, there's a lot of leaders, females that were in Maroon societies leading the attacks on the plantations, during that time period in the Caribbean and South America. So there's a long history there. I'm not going to expound too much on the Dahomey women. The first time I heard about the Dahomey women was during the movie Spook is Set by the Door. I don't know if any of you saw it, but the sister that was going with the FBI guy who ended up, dealing with Brother Freeman, the guy who was a Spook is Set by the Door, and he hipped her to, the women of Dahomey. And after that, she started wearing her garb and whatnot throughout the movie, which is a great movie. I encourage all these youngsters. I used to show it to all the gang kids when I was teaching about what they ought to be about instead of what they are about. But anyway, any questions or comments? Brother Rahh, you might want to go around the panel and see if they got any questions that I might be able to answer. A lot of this research you can do on your own, but there's plenty of material out there. All right.
Well, first of all, Asante Sana for that historical journey you took us on with regards to the ancient institutional women that we have to give praise and thanks to for their contribution to our liberation. Women for the most part, as Sister Making It Happen was saying, that in the movie A Woman King, from most critics, they talk about the beauty of the sisterhood they shared and the fact that they were dynamic with regard to demonstrating that the men, they didn't, as she was saying, they didn't demonize the man, but there was some analysis that some of the men were androgynous, acting feminine. But for the most part, it was a courageous film with Viola Davis, and they talked about the Dahomey community, which was an army of African women that fought off the European as well as fought off threats to their community. And it's pretty much like you see today, serious women who's taking care of their families as single mothers that make a way out of no way. And as Joe was saying, brother, historian Joe was saying, we have to give homage and respect to the women that stands up and make ways out of no way, to raise a family as a single mother. But as Joe was saying, the first families were matriarchal. In George G. Jackson book, I think on page 51, he was an atheist, and he did a lot of research, and he said the first families and the first social unit was a matriarchal, and that means that women rule. Matriarchal system is when women rule, and then as they went from food hunters to food producers, the role of women changed. When men didn't have to go out and hunt, and men didn't have to, just run off. And so the women began to become more domesticating the man, training their sons what manhood is about. The women were doing that. And they built, they were the first architect that built a thatch hut. And that's why you have skyscrapers today, because they were on top of the earth, where the European women were in caves. And a woman as the one that introduced hygiene to the world, because most people used to bath with dirt, but it was the African women that used the water and cleanliness, and even putting on clothes, undergarments, and things of this nature. The contribution of women and to our movement, because of the patriarchal system that and the sexism that came with the European, as brother historian Joe was talking about, whereas women were abused, accused of being witches, and just used for sexual objects, and then pretending like they're royalty and things of this nature, like this queen that just passed, who inherited her throne. The women had to earn theirs. And from our standpoint, the kings and queens of Africa on the continent, they served the people. The kings and queens in Europe, the people served them. And so it's a whole new different cultural exchange and value system with regard, when you start talking about Hatshepsut, there was a question of her, a women ruling, so she grew a mustache and began to act strong. And that's why she was able to reign, according to J.A. Rogers and according to, Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakana. So as Joe was saying, there's plenty of books about Black women and their contribution and struggle. Right here, we got Karen Bass, who's trying to be the mayor of Los Angeles. And, I've been putting her on my Facebook and urging everybody to get out and vote for this sister, even though I'm not in LA. I know a lot of people that do live there, and I'm trying to get them to support her. And, everybody's on deck. Malcolm said that we have to fight on all fronts. and it's either the ballot or the bullet. And as Joe was saying, and always said, along with the good doctor, we don't have no bullets, so we might as well use the vote. And that means you start training your children to be politically conscious at an early age. And that the first thing they do when they get close to 18 is register to vote. It's not a question of if it's counted or not. It's a question of that it's something you fight for to get it counted and to get it right. And that's what this sister Letitia James and sister Fanny of Fulton County, what they're doing, they're fighting for us to use our political strength. And so that's a critical perspective of women. When I was at Cal State Long Beach, women became the presidents of the BSU, the Black Student Union, and the Black Studies Student Association. And you have a woman Black vice president. You have Sheila Jackson, who's leading the reparation struggle. So we have to give homage to the women. And they make good wives and mothers for our children. And we have to quit urge young men that to honor their women, their mothers and sisters and cousins. When you see one on the street participating in behavior that's not becoming of the role of a Black woman, such as prostitution, drug dealing, or even shoplifting, stealing, and hustling for another man, that's somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's auntie, somebody relative. And as Mr. Farrakhan said, when you see a no good woman, she probably was made that way by a no good man. And so I agree with that. I mean, you don't exploit the women because of their vulnerability. And that's why the women in Iran that's standing up, we got to honor them for standing up for their rights. They're burning their garments and cutting off their hair, and they're breaking the theocracy in Iran of the oppression of women and the various laws, theocracy laws that relegate women to not being walking down the street without a male escort, that you can't divorce your husband no matter how he treats you. All those type of laws they have. And so when we look at what happened in this country, the abuse of the Black woman, she get abused twice. First for being a woman, first for being Black or African, and second for being a woman. Because this system is racist, capitalist, and sexist. And so she's and so she really hit the trifecta, because most Black women are poor, but they're leading in graduation. They're the most educated group in our ethnicity or race right now. Many of them finish school, and there's a reason why some men don't. That's legitimate. But the women have been improving their lives. Now, we have to begin to do a lot of studying, as Joe was saying. Many young men do not know the history and the contribution of the woman when it comes down to Fannie Lou Hamer, when it comes down to women that built institutions, colleges, universities, Mary McLeod Bethune College in Florida. All of these great women that we will pay homage to. And so we thank Brother Hembrick for his contribution. And we thank Sister What's Happening for viewing the movie and letting us know that some men can go in there and come out and don't feel that they've been put down by the women because they call her the woman king. and that the women played a vital role with regards to the Dahomey. Brother Rachki, you got that clip of Dahomey? Rachki,
Yes.
could you show it?
The Dahomey warriors were an all-female military regiment of the Kingdom of Dahomey, now present-day Benin. Reportedly assembled in the mid to late 1600s, the Dahomey female warriors were known for their indifference to pain and fierceness in battle, as well as having great socio-political influence over their kingdom to protect and enrich their own empire. By the mid-1800s, they numbered between 1,000 to 6,000 women. When the French invaded Dahomey in 1892, the women warriors put up an aggressive resistance. Afterward, the French soldiers noted their incredible courage and audacity in combat, as cited by the African American Registry, an online consortium of Black history educators. Fierce battling between the warriors and Europeans continued, but the African female warriors were eventually outnumbered and outgunned by the colonizers, as the full-grown men, troops of the Europeans, showed no mercy during their battles. While the Dahomey warriors were certainly powerful fighters, Leonard Wanchicon, a professor of politics and international affairs at Princeton University, argues it's important to look beyond the shock value of their female warrior status when considering the warrior's legacy in history. The most important feature of the warriors was not that they could kill like men, says Wanchicon, a Benin native. They were also regular people with regular lives, as well as respectful cultural and political leaders in their communities. There is a widespread misconception that gender equality is a Western value, adds Wanchicon, when in fact, European colonization was a detriment to women's rights in Benin, where the French disassembled the Dahomey warriors and banned female education and political leadership. When we push back against this misconception and embrace the culture of gender equality that was thriving in Benin and places like it before colonization, Wanchicon adds, it is a way to embrace the legacy of this exceptional group of African female leaders that European history tried so hard to erase.
And we want to say here on this channel, we uplift all Black women all over the world who are doing great things. There is no gender war on this channel. Unfortunately, far too many of our people still fall for that will.
So, Rachki, would you go around and see if anybody have any comments?
Yes.
Well, I wanted to say something if I could really quickly, because I do have to leave. Brothers, you guys are amazing. I think this is a great tribute to the sisters, and I just asked you to share it so that folks can hear some of the queens that were mentioned and the women warriors, and continue to shed the light and peace and blessings.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, Brother Machinda.
Yeah, appreciate everything. Listening in, I'm in agreement with a lot of things, that I've been listening to. My take on it is, we paying homage to women, that's a great thing, but my personal perspective, in my spirit and the way I think, I've always knew that women were, the secret weapon, we're living in the age of Aquarius. I'll leave that alone right there, for your own research if you don't know. But women, I tell young women all the time, I have extensive criminal justice background, worked in education for decades, and so when I come in contact with young men, I have my spiel for the young men. But when it comes to the ladies, you know, as an adult, as an elder, even of course, the ones that are older than me, of course, I give them their props. But I try to let them know that, hey, you got to take your power. I say, without you, this doesn't even work. And so like I say, I appreciate brother Hembrick, he going down the timeline, Sister Makeda, Candace and Hatshepsut and the various, strong women, the Dahomey women, all of that. And some I'm not um, entrenched in, I'm familiar with a lot of it, to a certain degree, but it gives me something to research even further, because you can't know everything. So I appreciate those comments, Brother Rod, moderating and, giving his um, contribution to this whole thought. But again, working in criminal justice, dealing with the young brothers, and it's not just the brothers; it's anybody that's locked down. I'm talking about the juvenile. 90 something percent of them that over a 10-year period that I dealt with didn't have fathers in the home. So so the mom, led the fight. Of course, she's competing with the streets. She has to work. She has her drug habits. She has her, whatever the situation is, but still she's the moderator. She's the orchestrator and that type of thing. So, the woman is, so I've learned that the woman is always a warrior, in my lifetime. And, so it's like to unleash the greatness, the power of the woman. Black and white men have incarcerated the woman, over the years. Misogynistic behavior, male chauvinistic behavior, and a lot of it's taught. Not a, it's not a indictment or anything to some. It's just what we've learned as men sometimes. But I've always been a protector of the females in my family, and even when my dad and mom separated and divorced at a certain point, any male that came to my household, I was, I stepped up, to make sure everything was right, to that degree. But but on like I said, on a more positive note, this is a good conversation. A lot of historical references, and I appreciate it. And I think I'll stop right there and just keep listening. Take care.
Okay. Brother Doctor?
Yeah. While you guys talking, I was doing a little research because I was going to ask, did the sister make it happen to leave already?
Yeah, she's gone.
Did anyone else see the movie? I'm just curious because I don't know anything about this movie. I just read about the Dahomey tribe. Only thing I've seen for the past week was the boycott. What's the name of the movie again? Woman King or something? What is it? What's the name of the movie?
Woman King.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I don't read news, none of this crap no more. Only time I read something researching when Professor Rahh, you guys talk about something, man, make it a subject. So I saw it, didn't pay attention to it until you guys started talking about it tonight. But I've been seeing a lot of boycotting the movie. So when you started talking about it, I just looked it up to see what was going on. So I guess the boycott was because they didn't portray them as slave traders. They were heavy in the slave trading, so they left that out the movie, I guess. So I guess that's a bad thing. I didn't know. So that's why I want to ask somebody that saw the movie was, what was in the movie. But what I'm getting is they left out that how they were fearless and capturing blacks and put them in the slave trade. They were the major player in the slave trade. they were so bad in slave trade, so powerful in slave trade that the whites had to come down and shut them down to stop slave trading. So I guess that wasn't portrayed in the movie. So to me, I guess it was, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing that they didn't show it. I guess it was positive. But one of my questions was going to be, what was it, the boycott was all about? Did you guys agree with them not showing how fierce they were in the slave trading? And the only little thing I just looked at, that I guess they couldn't marry, couldn't have kids. They were fierce warriors, but they were a major player in the slave trade thing. Any comments on that, Professor Rahh, Brother Hembrick?
Brother Joe, you want to start?
I didn't. I read something about that slave trade situation in a book by a European. So that kind of invalidated to me. But
well, that was just another thing they said. European helped write this story. So like I said, I don't know nothing about this. I'm just reading what I'm looking at right now because I just seen it, never paid attention to it till you guys brought it up.
Well,
there you go. So
about the era and the period that they existed was heavy from the Islamic involvement in the slave trade. That's why a lot of the Africans fled the East Coast and came to the West Coast, with Islam following them. And like I said on previous occasions, like they started the African enslavement about 1,000 years before the Europeans did. But I have to do more research on this about these, women or that empire actually being involved in the African slave trade. So I better not comment anymore.
Yeah, throughout the 17th, 18th century, the Dahomey and their all-female regiment became notorious for capturing and selling African slaves to Europeans between 1851 and 1852. The British imposed a naval blockade on the ports of the Dahomey, forcing the tribe to end the exploration of slaves from their bases. And the main thing came from Antonio Moore, who was, part of the ADOS, saying that they didn't want to, that the whole thing is, partially, half of it is inaccurate, So like I said, I just saw the clips on YouTube, never clicked it, didn't really care about Woman King until you guys mentioned it. And that just made me curious. Okay, now you guys are bringing up, why was everybody else bringing up? What's the boycott is all about?
Let me respond. First of all, let's get some clarity a little bit. First of all, the European has always said that we tried to bring up the issue that we sold ourselves and we captured and sold something. Yeah, we have three categories when we look at the Holocaust of enslavement. The perpetrators is one. That's those that come to kidnap, rape, and abuse, and capture, and either do some type of exchange for captives during struggle on the continent and anywhere else. Yeah, that's the perpetrator. Second, you have what is called the collaborator, those that work with those that are victimizing our people. And then thirdly, the victim. So they want to take the perspective of the victim off the table and talk about collaborators and that the European saved us, like they did in other movies. They always bring up a white guy that saved us. That movie. Well, anyway, getting back to that. Third, there's no such thing as slave trade. That's what the European calls it. that it was just trading. We were just trading. We were just purchasing and trading. There's no such thing as that. This was what you call human trafficking. Human trafficking, even though they may not have penal code calling it that at the time that it was participated in, but that's what it is, regardless of if you define it. You know, they and then how did the Dahomey get into captivity, and and somebody was selling? Did somebody sell them? Because Dahomeys are also those that became Maroons and became soldiers of resistance. So we can't let the oppressor be our teacher. Yeah, there are going to be some people that's going to criticize the movie. And I'm not saying that some of the Dahomeys didn't collaborate for whatever they could get and put those that they fought against, but they didn't necessarily know what the Holocaust of enslavement entailed, because they just, was in a thing where, hey, these are some captives. If you want them, give us something. And then they didn't know where they were going or how they was going to be treated, because they didn't know that it was as vicious and and who they were working with. And eventually those people came and got them also. It's like you go to the store, who gonna make you pay for something you can take? Okay, you go to the store, if you steal something, you take something, there's consequences. What was the consequences that made them give anybody anything for anything during that time? They had the guns, they had the weapons. See, there's difference between people that's living to be on the earth and just enjoy life, and then people that want to rule. When we start thinking about minority rule, as Joe Hembrick would tell you, the European is the minority of the world. And the only reason he's in power is because he majored in weaponry. The Indian said he brought the long knives, the steel knives. You understand? The Chinese had black powder for years. The European turned it into gunpowder. You understand? This man look at the money they spend on their military, because they're the minority of the world. They've always suppressed the rest of the world. When they set up this government on this country, in this continent, that's how the British are up there in Canada. It's all militarism. That's what it is about. And other people, they don't even think, they think about weapons, the gun, weapons and culture exchange and exhibition, who can throw the spear straight or things of this nature. A European now, we're gonna take it to a higher level. You don't bring a spear or a knife to a gunfight. And that's how they rule. Right now, if you was in court, you and the judge sitting up there in a modified robe was sentencing you, you wouldn't go if he didn't have all them soldiers in there and police in there with guns, bats, handcuffs, mace. You say, hey, man, you can't send me nowhere. You probably a faggot anyway. That's what you would tell him. But because he has that power of death dealing a person with no mercy, and the first thing he do is establish that he's a democratic society. Malcolm said they're not democratic. They're not a democracy. They're hypocrisy. Who we gonna believe? Them? They got black civil rights groups talking about, we gotta save our democracy. That's the same thing as the House Negro was saying when the master house was on fire. We gotta save the house. No. Down to earth brothers pray for a wind, as Malcolm said, and pray that the water don't come out the hose. But the other Negroes will do that. So I don't put that much faith in the criticisms of the movie about the Dahomey. Yeah, there may have been, but Africa is 12 million square miles. So they may have some Dahomeys that participated in some ethical and unprincipled behavior. But that's not all Africans. You understand? And most of us came from these different areas, and you know, we got to look at it from our perspective. That's why we have this forum, Black Truth. You know, we ain't gonna let no critics of the movie, and the movie was to illustrate the resilience and the strength, the sisterhood, and glorifying Black women who stood up and fought the British also, the Dahomey, and change it to, well, you know, they did sell your people. Well, the problem is, as the guy said about dope, it ain't the people selling the dope, it's the people buying the dope. You understand? If you didn't have so many people buying dope, you wouldn't have to worry about dope. And for people to think you can go anywhere and buy a human being, you're a sick person. To think you can buy a human being and then just use them as an animal and count them as livestock? No. Don't let them get you into that argument. No. Yeah, there's some collaborators. We have collaborators right here. Look at Clarence Thomas. You know, and Japanese had Japanese join the army to fight Japan. You know, I mean, they had collaborators. You know, I mean, they even talk about Christmas Odyssey, the first Black man, the first person killed in the Revolutionary War. I believe he was pushed in front of the man that they were trying to kill. And that's how he got killed. He probably hid behind it. But anyway, any response, good doctor?
Yeah, good points. But let me ask you this then. You brought up two things. So you're telling me, number one, you're telling me that this all-powerful tribe of women and the others thought that, hey, we can give them our enemies because these white Europeans with guns and bullets are going to treat them better than us. They're going to be okay with them.
No, I'm not saying.
So in the second part, you talk about Clarence Thomas, and it goes back to the, the part I'm getting on, I'm reading. Part of the slave trades where, they sold them slaves, to the Europeans because they told them, hey, if you don't give these people up, we'll get you. It's a form of survival. So the collaborators, like you just said with the Supreme Court dude and the Japanese, being a collaborator, isn't that a form of survival? They're surviving for themselves and their family. Wouldn't that be the same as these slave traders trading their enemies so they don't get captured and die?
Well, they did get captured and die. The guy, as Joe talked about, that's why he started off talking about the Berlin Conference, where they partitioned off Africa and all the countries. And even though the United States wasn't there, but they did participate by being allies to South Africa, Rhodesia, then give Black people a Rhodes Scholarship because they don't know the role of Cecil Rhodes in the killing of many Black people. And how you think you got all those European names in Africa and things of this nature? I mean, all I'm saying is I don't let the European be my teacher. That's what Joe said in his book, in his biography. I got all my knowledge, not from what I learned in school, but from libraries and from Essewan bookstore. If you go, you will find more positive struggles against the Holocaust of enslavement versus the European, who always tried to act like he's the victim. He gonna blame Africans for selling them. It wasn't us. They the one that captured their own people and sold them to us. Does that sound real to you? I mean, he does this all the time. All the time, he always blamed the victim. You understand? And I'm not saying that there weren't some collaboration, but Africa's 12 million square miles. You understand? 12 million square miles. There were millions of Africans there. So what if there was a little group that were participating in that? That don't speak for the millions of Black people that they brought over here that they didn't pay for, or that wasn't captive. And second, what kind of people would travel that far to buy people? And then talk about their Christians. The foreign ship's called the good ship Jesus. Oh, it makes sense. That's the only thing I'm saying.
No, yeah, you know what? And that's a good answer.
me
Because you just stated the facts what that fucking Don Lemon should have said on CNN when he was asked the same question. I'm just asking you. He couldn't explain it just like you just said. The white lady from Europe was clean, like, well, they should be getting reparations because Africans were, sold into slavery. And I kind of knew what you just said. Well, how are you going to blame 1% of the country that sold slaves? And well, the whole entire, you're going to justify 1% that sold Africans into slavery, justify the whole thing? So your answer just proved the point that I was thinking that Don Lemon should have said. He couldn't fucking answer the goddamn question.
Well, he married, he's engaged to a white man himself. But let me just tell you this. I agree with you, Doc. He don't know his history, he don't know his culture, or he wouldn't be engaged to a white male, and he wouldn't be into them behaviors. You'd be having children with a wife or a Black woman. You have to choose that. He chose to go with the white male, and so he ain't gonna bring up. And second, he got to keep his job, like you said, survive. He can't criticize the way I could. That's why we have to have our own forums, and we thank Rahh for giving us this forum so we can speak our own special truth. And you're right. It's not just him, Al Sharpton. All of them won't really get into Black truths and Black reality. They do a little bit, but they don't come down with the criticism of the Jewish community for their role in the abuse and the Holocaust of African genocide. And they won't get, you can talk about, have you noticed none of them talk about the slaughtering that Israel is doing to the Palestinians? That's ridiculous what they're doing over there. And at the same time, somebody brought up that look at the Africans starving in Ethiopia and in Sudan, and they're sending billions of dollars of military equipment over to Ukraine. You understand? Now, how can you get guns in, but you can't get food in? You understand? Man, that's the beauty of understanding and coming up with your own analysis by reading and listening to others that have been in struggle. They always turn, look, they put Martin Luther King in jail, in prison, criminalizing any Black person that stood up. Federal Douglass had to run out the country. They was gonna try to put him in prison. They do that all the time. Charles Diggs, who was the only congressman out of Detroit that went to Emmett Till trial. And next thing you know, he's indicted. The brother that was in Mississippi in Katrina, he was the mayor. He spoke against the system. 4 years later, they indict him. They use the law, but they can't indict Trump. Come on. Brother, if you'd had military secrets and took them out of the archives and took them to your pad and put them in a box somewhere, you'd still be under the jail for the rest of your life. But they act like, oh, he's not above the law, but they can't arrest him on the spot. They found the evidence at his house. What you gonna search for, find what you're looking for. It's like go into a person's house, finding fentanyl, and then don't arrest them. You know, you go to his house, you find the stolen documents, and the documents he refused to give back, mostly classified, but all of a sudden you can't just go and indict him because he's telling them, if you indict me, we're gonna tear this country up. You know, come on. That don't even make sense. You know, it's a beautiful thing though, Doc. I like your question.
And Doc, can I just make a little comment? Maybe this will, you know, about this slave thing, and in many African societies, you know, when they would have conflict and they would have captives, oftentimes the captives just merge right on into the regular society that captured them. You know what I'm saying? You know, some of them even married into, you know, the royal, you know, the title leadership and all of that. So it wasn't like enslavement, if you will. It was like capture, and now you in our society, now you marrying our women, and you adopt our stuff that we do. You know, that was to a large degree.
Like we doing now in the United States. We captured over here, now we involved in their society, marrying their women and coming in compliance.
Well, like Malcolm say, you know, we kind of getting next to a bloody jaw wolf to a degree. But yeah, matter of fact, England didn't stop. Well, that's what they say. They didn't stop. They stopped the slave trade like in the early 1800s. But France, I'd have to look into France. I know France hated them. No, that's Germany hated them brothers that became French and fought in the First and Second World War with the French. You know, Hitler really hated them because they were the ones chosen to protect that Sudetenland, which the Germans think is like their holy ground, the Sudetenland. And they had a lot of Africans from Senegal that had been up in France and had joined the military. They had them guarding that territory. So during the Second World War, actually, you know, they killed a whole lot of black people along in that German Holocaust. But they had already had the practice going because 50 years before, they did it on this island called the Shark Island off the coast of West Africa. They were running experiments on black people and all that because they were trying to see if they can get melanin in their body some kind of way. There are some white folks that eat black people's organs trying to get melanin. You know that? How sick is that? That's what's going on. That's what I believe what happened to all them kids down in Atlanta that they put on that board. Folks that killed all them kids. I think that was white folks trying to get that melanin in their body, eating little kids' black organs. So that's one of the major reasons why they dislike us, because we can withstand what they can't withstand. You know, because we got a melanin in us. That's why they can't stand the sun. That's why they can't go into the interior Africa, which is where they really want to go, in the interior. And just think about, you know, Dahomey, which is Benin now. You know, it's inland. So I don't see how these women was capturing slaves and they're inland and, you know, selling them to British. It don't sound right to me. You know, most of that stuff kind of took place on the coast. But I do know and will say that once the Arab started to mix with the African on the East Coast and producing a lot of these mulattoes, those were the ones that were really involved in the slave trade, like enslaving Africa. And they still doing it today. It's not over with. It's going on right now. And a lot of Africans in the East fled to the West and the religion came across North Africa, spreading also. That's why Tariq, General Tariq, the brother who invaded Spain, his grandma raised him as a Muslim, so he wouldn't have them problems if she was seeing what was coming down the pipe. You know that old song by Bill Withers, Grandma's Hand. Grandma's Hand. If they can see what's coming down the pipe and try to, make it so we can avoid the stuff that's coming. But anyway, I'm done for the night.
All right, Roger, keep bringing us on in.
All right. Good commentary, fellas. Excellent. All right, so on Wednesday we have Spring and Damian McCalman. That's a mother and son guest. And let me pull it up so I can show everyone. We have, all right, here it is. So it's images of professionalism. So that should be interesting. I was speaking with Damien. He was a guest before on our show. And we were having, a conversation about professionalism and how people speak. And one of the major things he was talking about is talking white. And so that was a topic that came up. So that should be very interesting. And plus we have a mom coming on with him. So that's always good. So that's what we have going Wednesday.
Well, Monday, we're going to have Tori Bailey, a sister that works with the homeless. She counts the homeless, and she works out of a councilman office in LA. And she's going to come and talk about the homeless, Black homeless people, and what's going on with them.
That should be very interesting also. Okay. Well, each one teach one in Conscious Corner.
All right.
Everybody have a good rest of the evening.
Okay.
All right. Peace.